I'm bullish on it, and
sorry, that wasn't your inside voice speaking.
Sorry, that was not my inside voice. Sorry.
welcome to That's What I Call Marketing, the podcast where you will hear from the leading lights in the marketing world and listen to their unique insights. Well, if you're enjoying That's What I Call Marketing, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you can rate or review the show, it is such an amazing help in terms of us reaching a new audience just like you. Our sponsorship kit for 2025 is available, and we had so many amazing sponsors and partners this year. And what was great about all of them, we started with the conversation and we set about figuring out a great way to work together. Thanks to all the sponsors this year, and would love to get involved with you next year. We are already looking for our Cannes 2025 sponsor. You saw the amazing content we had coming out this year. So if you'd like to get involved at Cannes 2025, don't wait around, get in touch with us now. Anyway, listen, on to today's episode. This is now becoming an annual tradition, I guess, because we did it last year. We get together with some marketing podcasts from around the world, and I am going to be joined today with Marc and V from the Sleeping Barber podcast and Elena from Marketing Architects, and we're going to cover all the things that we observed this year, some of our predictions, what we think is coming next year, some of our controversial moments, and some of our campaigns of the year. So let's get straight into this episode.
If you would like to reach an engaged community of marketing leaders, get in touch with That's What I Call Marketing to discuss sponsorship opportunities.
For the second, it's almost like an annual thing. We've got Conor and Elena joining us along with V to do a year in review. Conor and Elena, welcome. It's not really our show. It's like our show.
Shared show.
Collectively, yeah, it's not my show. I just happen to be talking again. The mic in front of me, and that happens. Do you guys want to just do a quick intro of yourselves?
Sure.
Yeah. Elena, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure thing. I'm Elena Jasper. I work at a TV agency called Marketing Architects, and I'm also the host of a podcast called the Marketing Architects Podcast.
Which is awesome. I love the nerd alerts, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
And then Conor.
Hi, I'm Conor Byrne, and I'm based in Ireland, and I host That's What I Call Marketing. I'm wearing my That's What I Call Marketing Christmas jumper. That's what I call a Christmas jumper. So there's only one available in the world. But I'm going to start doing them next year.
We're going to raffle it off. Charity auction afterwards.
Next year, it's going to be merch. It's going to be.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
And hey, guys, you do an introduction for us, for people who are listening to our podcast.
Yeah. V, go ahead.
Sure. I'm V. I am 45 years old. Just kidding. I lead the media and media and digital marketing division at one of Canada's largest telcos, but also co-host the Sleeping Barber podcast. And I'm genuinely really excited to be here. Marc, over to you, buddy.
I'm with him. The other co-host of the Sleeping Barber podcast. Yeah, really excited about the year in review to do it again with you guys. I think you said you had something. Yeah.
Okay, I got a joke.
Oh,
right.
There you go.
An American, a Canadian, and an Irishman walk into a bar. The bartender asks, "What will it be?" The American says, "I'll have a whiskey neat, and let's optimize that pour for maximize ROI. Okay. The Canadian asks, "Make mine a Caesar, eh? But only if it comes with a meaningful connection and measurable results." The Irishman grins and says, "I'll have a Guinness, but first, let's split test that pour for head retention. Can't make a decision without the data." Bartender sighs. "This round's going to cost me my whole marketing budget."
We walk into a bar.
Oh, Jesus.
So for the format today, we're going to cover off campaigns of the year. It's a very exciting year. Lots of great campaigns out there and lots of different perspectives from all of us. We've got a Bullish or Bearish section again on things we think are
popular demand.
Backed by huge demand. So much demand for this section again. Biggest marketing surprises of the year, which is, when I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, there's been a few. There's a couple out there, yeah. And then we're going to do our best to make predictions for next year. And I'm going to try and not repeat myself like I almost did in preparation for this. So let's start with the campaigns of the year. Elena, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. I can kick us off. I will say this was not easy to do, so I leaned into my subjective opinion here.
The best kind.
Yes. And I chose Budweiser bringing back Clydesdales. So I was one of those people who immediately noticed when they weren't in the Super Bowl in 2023, which is a crime because they are one of the best distinctive assets out there.
Totally.
Did you know I did a little research here. In order to become an official Budweiser Clydesdale, you as a horse have to be at least 4 years old, 18 hands tall, which is very big, weigh between 1,800 and 2,300 pounds, be bay in color, have 4 white stockings, and have a white blaze on your face. That's probably only 1 out of 10 Clydesdales. So
What?
Right.
Man, I never knew that.
This is like the elite of Clydesdales.
Yeah. Feels unfair to the other Clydesdales. I'm sure somebody's going to have
What
an
about
issue.
the EDI of Clydesdale?
I like
Where
to
does
think of
that
it as brand standards.
better?
But they've been a part of this brand since 1933. Another fun fact, they were first introduced to celebrate the repeal of prohibition in the United States.
Oh.
Yeah, and they've been in 45 Super Bowls before they moved away from them last year. And I remember after their ad aired and the horses were not in the spot, I was not the only one who was not happy. And it wasn't just marketers. A lot of people on X were talking about, where are the Clydesdales? And so this year, 2024, they came back. They also toured them nationally. They partnered with Folds of Honor, which is a nonprofit for veterans. And I just think it was brutal for AB InBev to take them away in the same year as the Bud Light boycott. And their sales had suffered since, but they did see a little bit of a bounce back this year. And I'm going to go ahead and attribute that to bringing back the
100%.
Budweiser Clydesdales.
Yeah.
There's a direct correlation right there.
It's a
Some
thing,
say.
though. Like,
Yeah.
It is.
it's so interesting about the standards that they have. I had no idea, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's going to make it
I mean-
harder for the AI prompt.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really interesting one. It, like, reminded me of, like, the M&M characters, too, that they got brought back at one point. It's funny how people do that. They just throw away, like, these amazing assets and then... Connor.
Yes. So for me, surprising to you, Elf Beauty is like, maybe it's just my brand of the year. I'm a bit obsessed with Elf Beauty, and I just think their approach to marketing, their growth is phenomenal. They're absolute rocket ship. And do you know how they work internally? So very small team, but every employee of Elf Beauty has a stake in the company. And that's a way that they get across all these silos. So they all are literally all invested in the growth of that company. So it's huge. But they had their So Many Dicks campaign this year, which was all about the amount of men that sit on boards. And actually, so many of them are called Richard or Dick. And they just were unapologetically leaned into it and had so many dicks and really trying to do something.
Are we going to have to rate this episode explicit?
Oh, we will.
What's the name?
It's someone's
Richard.
name.
It's a short form for Richard.
Yeah,
So sorry.
Dick is just it's just Richard. You just say Dick. Yeah. Well, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. So, and then they campaigned with Billie Jean King, and it was just amazing. So it was entertaining. It was. I don't really like the word purposeful, but it had like an agenda to it. They really want to change something.
Mm-hmm.
It speaks to their entire audience. So that was a phenomenal campaign, and they're an amazing brand. I'm such a huge fan of them and their products.
I watched one of the, I don't know what part of the campaign it was, but it was something about So Many Dicks, and they were showing like some of the stats around the diversity on boards. And it was like the equivalent of what they've done on their board is only represented by less than 1% of other Fortune 500 company boards, I think.
Isn't it insane? Like, it's funny, like not funny at all, but when you see the stats, you're going, this is just shocking. Like, how do you get there? And so they're really going after it as a thing to fix.
Yeah, there was another crazy stat. It was something like there's more people named Dick on a board than there are people of color or something like that. It was some crazy number.
What?
Like that's part of the reason why there's the So Many Dicks campaign. Like there's so many people named Richard, Rich, Dick, something like that.
I'm trying to hold it together over here, John.
Yeah,
you are. You are. That's mine for this year.
Yeah. V, what do you got?
So this was very difficult actually, but I think I'm going to follow Elena's lead and I'm going to pick one from Super Bowl this year. And Mark, you would have recalled that we did talk about this already, but for me, I went back and I watched it again. I'm like, it gets me every time. And that's the Michael Cera V Super Bowl ad.
Oh yeah.
It was featuring the actor Michael Cera, humorously highlighted the benefits of CeraVe's moisturizing cream by playing on the actor's name and blending humor with the product focus. And that looks like his cream. The ad became really memorable, very relatable. I actually use a cream personally, effectively engaging a wide audience during one of the year's most watched events. But like what sticks out is when celebrity endorsement goes right. Like this is an example where it was incredible. Humor, I think we talk about it time and time again, how humor is an important way to create those mental structures. So really lean into the humor side, how they brought the product into focus, which also was really creative. And even the timing, the build up, the actual ad in during the Super Bowl. I just thought it was orchestrated really well. It was great.
Yeah. I think so often with celebrities in the Super Bowl, they're often in multiple, even like brand ads.
Yeah,
That's great.
So it's so great that they also just focus him solely on this. He's known for this, and there's no way you miss who he was endorsing, which I think when I think about other celebrities like Kevin Hart, I couldn't tell you who he endorsed in the Super Bowl. I know he did multiple brands, but that was a big win for them. I loved that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Mark, what'd you have?
I had the McCain's ad, and it's the campaign. It's not just this year. I just learned about it this year because this is the one that won the Grand Prix of all Grand Prix of creative effectiveness for a 9-year campaign. So to me, this was a fascinating campaign. In particular, not only because of like the execution, it was like there's a great backstory to it. That I think of around the 2008 period, McCain's chips, it was a UK-based campaign. French fries, frozen French fries, were declining in sales. Private label from companies like Tesco and all those kinds of brands were like replacing and taking up store shelf space. And so they had to do something. They created this campaign rather than focusing on some of the things. Conor, you had a guest on talking about challenger brands. It's almost like they became a challenger brand where like all these other brands are like families eating French fries. They did like real world, which are moments around like, I think they call it tea time, which to me means dinner. And so they built these ads out around like real families and that kind of stuff and did it for 9 years. Sales started picking up, all kinds of things. But the big one for me was that the price sensitivity almost cut in half, which meant that they could increase their price without losing volume, which was an amazing kind of measurement to look at. We all talk about pricing as a component of marketing campaigns, but never like the primary outcome. So profitability goes up like tremendously when you can do stuff like that. So for me, it was one of those ones where I'm like, oh, that's really cool how the outcome is something so much more than like how many impressions we get, a whole bunch of business effects over a long sustained period of time, which to me was a really cool outcome.
And the fact that they stuck with it long enough for it to have those effects, because they're not going to happen in the first 6 months, but they obviously
and that went through like the COVID pandemic and a whole bunch of other like issues with economic pressures and all those kinds of things. Like it wasn't just a single like short 8-week window. And
their chips are like more expensive. Like than the own brand, they're at least twice the price, at least. And so it's brand power.
So that for me was a really cool result. And it was, like, as I said, it wasn't just a single year thing, but yeah. So those are the campaigns of the year for us. Some really good ones.
To all the winners.
Yeah. They'll be receiving that's what I call a jumper sweater. Marketing Christmas sweater.
One of one, worn and signed by Conor.
Yeah. Worn by Conor. So they got to share it. But look, it's fun.
So let's move on to Bullish or Bearish. Let's talk, like, we talked about this last year in a couple of categories like research and marketing, mix modeling, AI and marketing. And no surprise there. I think we were all in agreement that we were bullish about AI and marketing. Elena, you guys have done some really cool things with smart targeting, with leveraging AI, which I think was really interesting because who knew that would be a thing 2 years ago? And now all of a sudden it's a totally practical thing to do. And so this year we have a couple of new topics, newish. Conor, we're going to start with you with the value of influencer marketing. Bullish or bearish?
I'm bullish on it. And
sorry, that wasn't your inside voice, Pete.
Sorry, that was not my inside voice. Sorry.
You said So I got to go to an influencer event in London during the year, and like I've had views on influencer, and I've done stuff before, and I've been probably a little bit skeptical in places, maybe a bit like UV. And I saw this event, and it was phenomenal what the brands there were talking about, and some of the ways they're approaching influencer marketing. And so what I think the problem probably is with influencer marketing is people think there's just a one size fits all, or just it's a silver bullet, and it's just not. And it's the brands that are being successful with it are brands that are using a lot of hate all these words, but micro-influencers, more nuanced influencers. So that idea of, we just get this big person to do this thing, and that's great. It just doesn't really work. Like Spotify have something like 18,000 influencers.
Right.
That they were, right. So they're working with all these people. And so that to me is the incredible opportunity for brands in the influencer marketing space. There's companies and platforms that are helping you measure it more. There's more investment in it. I think the influencers themselves are smarter. I think the word influencers is problematic because in your mind, it conjures up the image of the person who goes to the local coffee shop and says, I'm an influencer, I want this for free. And you're just like, no, you're not, or that kind of stuff. So I think there's such an opportunity in the space. I think it needs to grow up a bit in terms of the metrics and measurement of it. I think how people incorporate it into their overall marketing mix, but actually the way you can show up in front of your audience, your consumers, with people who they actually care about maybe more than you, is an incredible opportunity. So TV is dead, influencers are in. I'm joking.
Oh, wow.
He was looking at Elena there. She's like, what did he just say?
I just feel like Elena has to come in now.
We have to decide. It's one or the other.
You're either with us or you're against us.
Yeah.
Well, I would take TV every day then. But I agree with you on influencers. And I think if they could be evaluated maybe even more on Cialdini principles like social proof and liking, they're probably doing more for your brand than just those immediate sales they're driving. And I know that micro-influencers are becoming more popular, but there is some value of reach there too, because even with a micro-influencer, you're hitting people that aren't exactly in your core target. Not everyone who follows them is going to fit an exact demographic profile. So I like a lot about influencer marketing.
Yeah, there's a lot to like, especially on the content production side. Like you can, if you have solid brand standards, especially, and give people some guidance around what you're looking for, like the Clydesdales, not that you give them cameras, but they couldn't hold them. That would be a problem. But to have that idea around what you want from the brand and give an expectation around that, and then have an army of people producing content, like that's interesting.
Yeah.
Elena, let's stick with you. Let's go to targeting: first party, third party, zero party, every party, contextual targeting. Like, what's your take on targeting? Bullish or bearish?
Yeah, so I wasn't entirely sure how to answer this because I am bullish on certain types of targeting. I know you hate when we do this, but I'm bullish on.
It's me that hates it.
It's just it's a
this
really.
This is where the what comes.
Yeah.
They're so different. It's hard to say, but I'm bullish on certain kinds, like first party data, contextual, bearish on more third party data. But I love the debate in general. I think it's so fun. And our agency, we have a view on targeting that apparently is contrarian, but I think I don't really see it as contrarian. So first of all, we test all kinds of targeting. So we don't just blanket exclude any type of targeting with TV. It does depend on the brand. However, I've just seen time and time again that first party data and contextual outperform third party every single time for TV advertising. And we do see time and time again that most brands target too much, and they'd be better off maybe expanding their targeting, especially when they go onto a medium like television. And I hate this example, but it's the best one I can think of at the moment. So if you go to a gun store here in the United States and you need to purchase a gun, for protection of your home, just bear with me.
Okay. We were worried
Land
about
that plane, Elena. Land that plane.
Yeah.
So if you go in there, they're likely to recommend you a shotgun. And the reason for that is because the average American isn't that great at firing a gun, and a shotgun has what they call a good spread. So it's going to increase your odds of hitting an intruder. And it's morbid, but I think most of us marketers, we might think we're expert marksmen. We're not always able to hit that perfect target. Also, you might want to hit not only your target, but their influencers, their friends, their family, who's in market, who's out of market. And when you target broader, you can hit all those people for the same price as precisely hitting one person who might not even be the person you think they are. So I don't know if it's because we like the certainty of I'm only hitting like this exact person, but it's usually not even accurate. And I would love for this to become less controversial in general.
So buy more shotguns is the takeaway.
Great, yeah, maybe. I don't know. If anyone has a better metaphor, let me know. But this is the best one I have.
Got there in the end. I'm going to give you that because
she landed.
No, your analogy.
She landed it beautifully.
Really well. Yeah,
thank you.
You landed the plane.
I'll just jump in if you don't mind, because just to build off that, my topic was brand versus performance marketing. I'm big on brand, less so on quote unquote performance marketing. mostly because I feel like there is so much misperception, and not even like there's a lot of, I don't even want to say lies. Let's just say lies. We're all being extreme today.
We're talking about shotguns.
Yeah,
we're talking about
fraud.
lies.
Yeah,
Fraud.
there's so much fraud in like misbelief and misattribution and all those kinds of things. Like there's this path we've been led down, which leads us to believe that we can do one-to-one targeting for everybody across the world on every on every device and those kinds of things. And we, like, time and time again, we've proven to ourselves we can't. So I'm bullish on brand, mostly because of the idea of being able to reach larger groups of people. B2B is super important because there's buying groups that are so big, you can't accurately find the single person who's a decision maker because there isn't a single person. There's 15 people. And the same thing is true in B2C, I think, as well, where you've got, sure, an individual that buys a pair of shoes, but maybe my kids are influencing me. Maybe my wife is influencing me. Maybe so on and so, like, there's so many different things that are factors in that single decision. To me, it's the idea of brand is more about reach than it is about the precision or perceived precision of one-on-one.
And perceived to be cheaper as well. People are like, oh, it's cheaper, it's more cost effective. And like, again, there's so much waste and there's so much fraud.
Yeah.
That you can't actually say that, but there's the wrong click attribution.
Yeah.
So people are like, oh, well, therefore it cost us this and we drove that down.
Yeah.
Like, so that's
like I do
the narrative.
Yeah, and I think a lot about that. I think you mentioned in one of your podcasts, Connor, with Diageo 2x2, which is on one axis is effectiveness, on the other axis is efficiency. And so we look at a lot of the channels on especially on the digital side, where it shows a cost per 1,000 or it shows a cost per click, and all those are efficiency metrics. But we get blinded to, are we doing the thing we're supposed to do, which is acquire more customers, reach more people, those kinds of things, and we can lose sight of that a lot of times. I'm not saying that performance doesn't work. It's not important, but I'm just not as, I'm bearish on performance as like silver bullet to all of our answers. Because if it was, 15 years ago, we would have figured out which half our advertising is wasted.
You are listening to That's What I Call Marketing.
If you would like to reach an engaged community of marketing leaders, get in touch with That's What I Call Marketing to discuss sponsorship opportunities.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting to see how many of the performance advertising platforms end up advertising on TV.
Yeah,
like
right?
a Meta, a YouTube. Like they recognize the value of both and a balance.
100%.
So it's definitely the emphasis is probably too far on performance.
Yeah, I agree.
I completely agree. And actually, when we think about the types of targeting, so originally your position there, Elena, I would, at the surface level, I would say bearish on it. However, the way that you articulate it, if we're using contextual and first-party data, I think, and you're saying, these are going to be my sources of truth, I think that makes sense. It's, I think, where it muddies the water is all these other peripheral targeting abilities that some of these platforms often like to sell or get us as marketers on them. Because I think it does a few things. So it will distract from the core message. You can actually have a user experience impact as well. Because again, if you've missed, and actually like your analogy, Elena, if I'm being honest, but if you put it all on one thing and you're trying to create that one-to-one connection, but like you miss wide, then you're going to be reaching an audience that this material or the service or whatever you're advertising may not resonate at all with. So you're not going to see the conversions or the whatever KPI that you're measuring. I think it also adds a layer of complexity and confusion to a lot of it because, again, this overpromise on targeting actually takes away what we're actually trying to do, which for me, then it's why I'm also bullish on the brand side, even though my day-to-day operations in the digital marketing space, but do oversee all of media, is bullish on the brand side because it's going back to creating those long-term equity, those customer relationships. You can actually differentiate from your competitors a lot easier in that space than you're trying to do it on the performance side. So I'm with you, both you and Mark, on this, that we need to be bullish, I think, on brand. The only reason, again, I said that I'm bearish a little bit on the targeting is because when we're thinking about targeting overall, where it can be somewhat a little bit overbearing. But I completely agreed with your statement, Elena. Anyone else want to top up on that?
All right, let's get into a really spicy conversation.
Yes.
Bullish or bearish on diversity campaigns versus woke culture.
Okay, so I'm going to be very direct here, and I'm going to do this purposefully because what I want to be portrayed here is like what it applies to the most advertisers out there. I'm not saying about the ones that actually do something like this really well. I'm bearish on this. I'm bearish on the woke cancel culture or trying to integrate it because we've seen time and time again examples where this doesn't work well. So Bud Light is a great example. In 2022, they were generating over $5.2 billion. They run the ad with Dylan. At the time, actually, their key competitor, Modelo, was doing about 4.8. They run the ad in 2023. I think it was April. Was it March, April? Somewhere in there. Their revenue dropped in that same year to 3.8. Modelo went up to 5.4. In 2024, they're at 3.6. So they still haven't recovered or come close to that. And Modelo's sitting here at 6.1, revenue that they haven't even generated yet. So when I think about that, the perceived insincerity, the risk of backlash, the cultural sensitivity, the polarization some of these things like create, and probably most recent one, I would even argue even Jaguar probably falls into this as well. I feel you have to be very careful on how you choose to bring this to life because the risks of it going sideways are larger or outweigh the benefits when you do it well. And again, there's some examples of this doing well. I think Dove is the one that always comes to mind, but they've made it a part of the ethos and they've been doing it for the last, I want to say, 15 years, if I'm not mistaken, but probably goes even back further. So it's different when it's woven into the very fabric of your organization versus when it's something that I'm trying to check a box because I saw a study somewhere. So that's why I'm bearish on this. That's not to say that it can't be done right, but for the most of the advertisers, if you will, out there, I'd be bearish on it. That's just my take.
Yeah. I like Mark Ritson. He says that if you're going to invest in purpose, you should be prepared to lose sales. Like you shouldn't be doing it as some type of marketing strategy. It should connect with who your brand is and be a part of what you're already talking about. I definitely agree with you. And I think with Dove, what they did well was they brought more people in to their brand through their purpose campaigns, people of all different body sizes, all ages.
Agreed.
And a lot of these other brands, I think they're narrowing too much. They're speaking to a small percentage of their target and alienating a lot of the rest of it. So maybe if we could do more purpose around including more people, that might do better.
It's like Elf in a way too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think from having, it's different when it's like greenwashing, like just slapping on a label, which I would say is maybe the risk for a lot of brands when they get this idea to do something related to purpose and doing EDI or diversity just because it's a thing that's happening in the world and trying to retrofit it onto a brand as opposed to making it part of the brand.
Totally.
Is it like someone said to me about kind of all those initiatives that like it has to be more than words on the lanyard? Like all these companies with lanyards, like these are our beliefs and blah, blah, blah. And they don't live it and they don't really believe it's on a wall somewhere. And that's the starting point for it going wrong. Because then if that shows up in communications, you're on like a hiding and deservedly so. So like it has to be, like you got brands who are founded on those great principles. I don't think it means a brand can't go there. But to your point of view, like there has to be a real reason for it. It has to be meaningful. It has to just be associated with their brand. And when they're doing it, as you say, Elena, like they're willing to lose to win.
Yeah.
Let's talk about marketing surprises for the year. Maybe Elena, we can start with you. What was one of or a couple of the biggest surprises that you've seen this year?
So I've got one that was I think a surprise everyone would experience, and then one that was a personal surprise for me. The more general one is we had a big election this year in the United States, and something like over 70% of ad spend was on TV. And people freaked out about it when that stat got out there, and why are people spending so much money on television? And I think again, as someone who's a big fan of TV, it was obvious to me why someone would use television to try to win more voters, because you can tell a story, it's emotional, you can show the person you're voting for, you can saturate local markets with TV. But I think that one was something that I was a bit surprised by. And then a personal one is I've shared perspectives a few times on frequency And that turned into more of a debate than I ever thought it would. Like, it seems like a pretty boring topic, but we, and maybe it is, but we found again and again that your first frequency is the best frequency for driving a sale. And that is not a popular opinion among a lot of digital marketing platforms, because they want you to spend a lot of money on their platforms. And they usually push, you need 6, 7 frequencies to make a sale. And again, we see your first frequency is your most efficient. That doesn't mean you can't make sales later on. That doesn't mean you should have one frequency. That doesn't make any sense. It's not even possible. But it does mean that if you want to drive sales, instead of tightly targeting, bringing that back up, you'd be better off reaching as many people as possible, because that first frequency to a new customer is going to be your most effective. I hope I answered these questions right, but those are 2 different ones.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the ad frequency thing is super interesting. Well, even the TV spend for the campaign, the election campaign, was really interesting too. But the ad frequency one, I like, for whatever reason, I've been watching. Well, there's stuff like ad spots, like in a 2 or 3 minute ad set. I see the same ad oftentimes in the same, and I'm like, why would you do that? I mean, extend that out a little bit. Like, it's me, I saw it twice. Now it's almost like wasting the spot, one of the 2 spots, because I've already seen it once in the same ad set. And so, yeah, like by splitting that out, even within like an ad set into 2 or 3 different ad sets, but 2 or 3 different 2 or 3 of the commercials into 2 or 3 different ad sets, like, you're just going to reach more people. It just makes sense when you think about it, like from a very granular perspective.
Yeah, I think everyone who watches streaming can probably relate to that. And it's ineffective, and they're not meaning to do it, but there's a lot of issues with like cross-platform measurement and how they all speak to each other. But there are ways to prevent it and reduce it if you know how. But yeah, it's a huge issue. And no, it's not effective to see the same ad 10 times within like the span of 20 minutes. It's not helpful.
Or in retargeting, seeing the same ad 30 times in a week, like,
bought it. I bought the item, you know.
Conor, what have you got for surprises?
So the pre-testing debate that went on earlier in the year, unsurprisingly, Mr. Ritson was involved with it. But Peter Field weighed in as well. And the point of view was that, like, you're an idiot if you don't pre-test. Right. And Ritson, who says he doesn't have any investment in System 1, kind of came in and says they're the best at it. And I'm probably misquoting him, but like, he was really defending them because people were having a go at them. But for me, the problem with it was, if you're a big brand and you can afford pre-testing, brilliant. But if you're not and you can't, that's a problem. And so in the article, and he showed an animatic that Carlsberg did for an ad, and they pre-tested it, and it helped them decide how to make the finished ad. The animatic itself was almost good enough to go on TV. Like, it was phenomenal. It was so good. And so again, you're talking that level of Carlsberg, global brand, big budgets. Of course they have those budgets. So like, that was I don't disagree with pre-testing, and there are more platforms coming out now that are making it more accessible. Like, over here, we've got Red Sea Research that have the Red Star Direct platform. It's like a couple of grand. So it is getting there. But I just felt it was too black and white for me to say, yes, that is, the only thing to do, and there's no alternative. It was my kind of thing. I wasn't surprised that there was a debate about it, but I just felt it was too one-sided.
So I can speak to like pre-testing a bit, because we pre-test all of our commercials, and LLMs have just totally changed what you can do with pre-testing. I mean, we used to, and we still do occasionally, but we used to run huge surveys, panels of real people. And when comparing that to results from an LLM like Claude or ChatGPT, it is more accurate, unfortunately, for people that run those big survey companies. We're able to pretest now. We have a pretesting tool that actually doesn't require animatics. You can pretest now from the script for a TV spot. So I think there's very few brands and agencies doing that right now, but I think LLMs are going to completely democratize. Also, we just ran a brand study for our agency, and we still ran it through a traditional platform panel of people. Then we also ran it in an LLM. It was like 95%, the exact same. Like, frankly, it's terrifying. So there's lots of fun stuff to think about there.
And I think that's like John and Pete talked about that with Evidenza, their synthetic research. There was 95% or 90%, and they were focused on the percentage. They're like, well, actually, you'll make the same decisions. So I think that's where it's going, I think. And then maybe like the likes of System Ones who do charge more, how are they going to adapt? I'm sure they're well able to. They're a smart company. But anyway, it's an interesting space. And I just felt it was a bit too one-sided and there's only one answer. But it's going to be different this time next year.
I like that you brought up Evidenza, Conor, because the one thing that I heard collectively when on yours and when he came on and talked to Mark was just around the speed. Like sometimes they'll get pinged on the Friday from an organization and they'll have the research inside of the inbox on Monday morning, right? Yeah. Because they're trying to prepare for a board meeting or things like that. So that for me, I think is what's going to change and usher in this new era. I see a System One adapting, probably having like a LLM version of that, but then it's like, you want to go deeper, it's going to cost you more. This is what we're going to get, but you'll be able to be validated likely through the LLM instead. But yeah, it's really interesting to see how this is going to continue to evolve.
Yeah, and the challenge would be that like System One, they're going to be able to build an LLM based on all their historical data.
Totally.
We have 20 years of historical data of TV performance. So Conor, like if a brand doesn't have that, then it's not as easy to just, you can still try it, but without that like custom data, it's not going to be quite as accurate. So I can see how people might be more wary of that.
I agree.
Yeah. V, what do you got for surprises?
I had two because I wanted to see where it goes. And this is not just have to do with the recency bias, but I have to say my biggest surprise has to be Jaguar this year overall. The relaunch of a brand platform, the way they went about it, the controversy that it's actually generated, and it's divided the marketing community like through and through. But I think, again, Mark, we talked about it literally a couple of weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. And I think one thing that we have to, what's his name? Gary McGovern, I think like spokesperson, the creative director, he's been defending Jaguar by saying things like Jaguar has no desire to be loved by everybody. Controversy has always surrounded British creativity when it's at its best. We're delighted to have your attention. Like I hear these things and I can see it internally. They may be able to turn that around and create a rally cries like the world's against us. Let's go all in. Here we go. But the way they went about this, they didn't launch the video with the car up front. Then we got some renderings of the car and it's supposed to launch in 2025. They launched it in the art show, the Miami art show, or I don't remember exactly what it was called. It just feels like they're really digging their heels into this and going opposite of what would be expected. But everything that we've come to learn about distinctive brand assets and things like that, they're literally just like throwing it out and saying, we're going in a completely new direction. So I don't have an opinion in terms of saying like, will this work or will this not work? All I'm saying for me, it's like the biggest surprise based on the literature, based on things that we've come to know as marketers, in an approach of this caliber, a total rebrand, gone all the way to the side where they've actually deleted all images on their socials of any previous vehicle or anything like that. Like it's phenomenal to see how they're approaching this. And for me, it's by far the biggest surprise. My second one would have been like Mark Ritson's like take on North American marketing, but we'll leave that for another time.
Fair enough. Mine, similar to what some of the things you guys actually have said already. I have System One in here. I have Harris Trump campaign and I have Jaguar. But the thing that's surprising to me is we talk so much about how people don't think about our brands. And then these kinds of examples come up and there's this visceral reaction of a lot of times anger, frustration, hate, whatever. Yep. And then you're like, do people really not care about brands? Maybe they do a little bit. Like that's the surprising part to me is more just how, and maybe it's venom. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's definitely more people than I would have thought that care about even the Bud Light campaign, like that you brought up earlier, V. There's a definite negative reaction to brands, maybe not so much the positive. Yeah. And so that's the surprise to me. Maybe that's part of the take on this or the insight is like having and Bud Light's a good example that you brought up, V, because you have to be careful with the brand and people can flip and be really angry about it. But if you're doing a great job, you may not know as much about how great of a job you're doing until you make a misstep.
Would any of us be surprised in like 6 months or maybe when the car launches and the sales are so soft that all of a sudden the creative director, the marketing department, like that's all been like moved out of the company? probably not. Because this seems like, even though it's being portrayed like this is a company decision through and through, I don't know. We'll see. When it gets to the point of sales and the sales aren't coming in, who's going to pay for it? And it will likely be the marketers.
Sales do come in.
Then it was,
we're all wrong.
Yeah. Then we're all wrong. And that's okay.
They did things that were like, so they created attention. Like, do you know what I mean? So they, like, you look at it and like the Sony bits they did, like you kind of, why did you get rid of some of those beautiful assets that you had? But like, they managed to create a huge amount of attention, which is really hard to do, because to the point, like, people don't care. And so they, like, was that the most intentional thing that they did? Because none of this is in any way like anything less than a massive departure from where they were before. And they've been working on it for, is it a year and a half they've been working on this? And, or did they just get so caught up in it internally and they never, I don't know. Like,
my only thing here is like, they created attention, but they created attention in the marketing community. Did they create attention in the car community? And I think that's where this kind of falls off a little bit. And again, I don't want to use my focus groups and things like that, but like, there's a lot of car guys, if you will, that we'd like to chat. And I brought the whole story to them. They hadn't even heard of this.
They're not. Okay. Wow.
So like, that for me is like the biggest concern is like, you're creating buzz, you're creating attention, but it's the right attention. I don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a big part of the strategy. It's like, first, we're going to attack the marketing community. Next, we're going to go to the consumer. Like, we don't know what this rollout looks like. And that's why it's going to be interesting, because I think, Mark, you've put it best. Like, this is a case study unfolding right before our eyes. So we'll see.
It looks like the Pink Panther car.
Hey, my goodness.
Yeah.
It's
I
pretty
think
cool.
You're right. We're not going to know until we don't know what their plan is to reach more, like V, you're saying, more car buyers. But I would say right now they're not expanding their audience or appealing to a broad range of people, and they're dumping their distinctive assets, which seem like two very poor marketing decisions.
Yeah.
So that's all we can see so far. So we'll see what happens.
But if you like taking that idea and flipping it into the Olympic campaign, the presidential campaign, I mean, there also is a polarization play that they're taking. They're isolating giant group, like half of the country kind of thing. And so they're trying to create differences. So I don't know at what point isolating groups of people becomes an ineffective strategy. You know what I mean? Like, there's a scale component probably that happens at a presidential side of things, but maybe doesn't happen at a niche brand side of things. I don't know.
Yeah. And if you have that money, are you spending it on that car now? Do you know what I mean? Like, because they just taken away a huge amount of the brand value that's associated. And I know they were in deep trouble. Like, they were in deep trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. You're right, Mark. It's a case study right before our very eyes.
Yeah.
You are listening to That's What I Call Marketing.
Speaking of case studies right before our eyes, let's talk about predictions. What do you think is going to be a case study happening in 2025? V, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can kick us off. This one was harder for me, and I don't know why, because like naturally my mind went to like things that will probably affect me first. So things like retail media networks especially here in Canada, are becoming more and more prominent. How do we start leveraging? So I would argue that's probably one part of this. But if I want to take a step back, I think the bigger play here is going to be like video content domination, how it's going to continue to accelerate overall. Like, talking about TV, how a lot of this content is being repurposed for multiple channels. I think we're seeing advertisers really lean in on the video side more and more than ever before, because I think there is that distrust on that performance marketing, so the traditional banner ads, lack of engagement. And when we're thinking about like, we want to try to convey our messages effectively, you want to try to engage across multiple platforms. So you have your short form, you have your long form. I just feel like there's going to be even more and more doubling down on the video side of our space. Not to say that's not already there, right? I'm just thinking about the adoption continue to accelerate across all advertisers. So I even know, like, from our side, like we did not run a lot of display or static images this year, and we did lean more on the video side. So I don't see that slowing down. The only time you were to add any static is just from a reach perspective, try to achieve literally from a cost efficiency perspective more than anything. But Yeah. Then you think about like, what is it, Meta Quest and like all these like immersive experiences, AR, VR. Like, I just feel like video is going to be just continue to grow in demand overall. So
it's a good take. Elena, how about you?
it's a safe one.
Yeah, I have one. I think that AI creative is going to become indecipherable from human creative.
Yep.
And I say that because it's getting really good. And as a TV agency, most brands on TV now are using AI in some way. You just don't notice it. Like, you hear about the Coca-Cola spots when it's like, if it's 100% AI, it looks freaky. Or like, okay, there's still it's like still lit off. Most brands are using it just to, like, hey, say you had a shot and there's a picture in the background. Before you'd have to go back and say you want to remove that, you have to reshoot. More money, more hours. Now, using these AI tools, it's super easy. A couple clicks and that's gone. So
Totally.
I think that it's just going to become more and more a part of what marketers do. And V, to your point, it's going to help marketers that want to invest in more video and want to create more video. It's going to democratize that a bit for everybody.
It's going to make it so accessible. It really is. Like, it's a game changer. And I'm fascinated by some of the comments that I and others get on LinkedIn sometimes when we talk about AI, and particularly agencies are up in arms and there's no idea there. Sometimes, like, the cost of being dull, right? So, like, a lot of advertising is really bad. And so all these people giving out are ranting and raving and it's not great. It's like, well, show me the last 8 ads that you made in your agency. And were any of those brilliant? Because I don't think that they probably were. You may have 8 that you've made in your agency, but show me the last 8 that you've actually put out the door. A lot of them are low-level production. And my thing is this bit of a rant. I think agencies know that their production budgets are in trouble, and that's where they make mark.
100%.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, right now we're using it to bring to life concepts that we wouldn't have been able to shoot. And as an agency, we're a bit different because we pay for creative. So I think it's easier probably because we're always trying to figure out how to reduce costs. But yeah, so far it's been able to take like human ideas, human concepts and make them even better. But yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a very emotional subject
Totally.
for a lot of people.
Conor, how about you?
My one is, this time next year, we're all going to be talking about Professor Felipe Thomas from Oxford University. And he's got research. It's actually out now, but it's officially launching in the new year. And like, the headline basically is that what Ehrenberg Bass and Byron Sharp have taught us, more probably Byron Sharp, how brands grow is not what we should be doing. And the evidence that he has suggests that reach is not the strategy that we need to be following. It was a brilliant headline that said it leads to really mediocre outcomes, and Byron Sharp's rules no longer hold, and he has the evidence. It's a 2-year peer review process that they've just been through. Yeah, it's going to be really disruptive. It's going to force us all to I don't know if it's rethink, but definitely look at it and examine it. In the paper, because I asked him, I'm coming up as a guest in the new year. But I did ask him, like, what do I do now? Like, how do I, like, I bring this to media, they're all buying for reach. What do they do? He actually has code in there that could be helped for planning. So, like, it's deep, it's well thought through. His starting point wasn't to disprove Byron Sharp at all. It was a completely different starting point. This has been the outcome. In the peer review, he also told me that he wasn't asked to discuss or mention Byron Sharp at all in the work. So that in itself speaks maybe volumes. So it's really interesting. And like everything, there's no one answer. It's not, but I think it's definitely something everyone's going to have to pay attention. And we'll be hearing a lot more from him next year. He's going to have to do something he doesn't want to do, which is be out there talking about this, because he's done this work. He has to make it public. And I said to him, your biggest problem is people are going to think that you are the one that you want to be famous, and it's not. He just doesn't. He's like real academic guy. So, but look, I think it's going to be a big disruption for us next year.
That'll be interesting.
Mark, how about you?
So coming back to the bullish or bearish idea, like, I think media mix modeling, tying in some of the things you guys have talked about too, is going to become a bigger and bigger thing. Like AI and the ability for us to do all these pre-testing, do all the like performance testing through media mix modeling. The tools themselves are just getting better. And I think there's a desire, which is creating demand for something other than looking at what Google Analytics tells us or Facebook Analytics tells us. Because it's when you add up the sales, they don't equal what's in your bank account. And I think everyone's going, why is that? Like, there's got to be another way. And so I think the tools and the technology is merging with this awareness, which is also meeting this desire to prove ROI or prove the effectiveness of what we're doing. And so I think that's going to be an interesting development and an accelerated kind of space for next year.
Can we go back for a second? Conor, I'm curious about this Felipe Thomas stuff. I'm just generally curious. So what exactly is his point of view? Because I can see how some of Byron Sharp's reach stuff, Ritson's talked about this before, that sounds great if you're a big brand and you have a huge budget and a super broad audience and you're selling toilet paper, but there needs to be some sophistication for it. And one thing I've found is that a lot of times it's just too expensive for most brands to have broad reach. So you'd be better off focusing in a bit more. But again, which is why we buy TV the way we do, because it's efficient. But yeah, I'm curious, what exactly, and I should read his stuff. I actually haven't even heard about it before. But can you define more his exact point of view?
Yeah, it's there's a lot to it. So there was 1,000 campaigns that he took. I think it was over a 5-year period, and the majority of them were the media was bought on reach. And he said that the outcomes that they had based on the modeling that he was able to do, again, getting real scientific-y on me, was something like 2% of increase on business effects, when they could have potentially led to, I think it was something like 15% of business effects if they had been more category specific effectiveness strategies applied. So not just broad reach, that we want to reach everybody in the market. So his original title for the paper was No Silver Bullet. And so it's a bit like what Karen Nelson Field has been saying, is not all reach is equal. So it's a bit of that in it as well. But it's just, I think the disruption is going to come from the headline that is and what lots of people have done is taken Byron Sharp's work. And he's actually said, even in the scientific papers from Ehrenberg and Bass, they haven't said a lot of the stuff that Byron Sharp has gone into, right? So they've said that it's more nuanced than this. And he's gone in, and again, headline for him is buy on reach, right? That's the strategy. And he said the problem is people have taken that as a gospel and applied that blindly to everything they're doing. And he goes, it's just that it's not that simple. And so this is more needs to be more nuanced.
We had a conversation about it too, and on WhatsApp, and some of the notes that I had from that chat were the takeaways I had were all reach isn't equal, which was the same as Karen Nelson Field.
Yeah.
Which I think Byron also agrees with, though. This is the part where it's a sensational headline, because we asked about sophisticated mass marketing, and his take on it was, well, it's not just about reach, it's about reaching as many people as you can within your market and your category, and not artificially segmenting the market. And so in some ways, I don't think they're different, but the headline is so such a shot across the bow towards the Ehrenberg Bass work. Optimal media mix, another one is optimal media mix is dependent on consumers within the category, which isn't different from Benet Field's work, I don't think. I think it's complementary to that. Consumers are polygamously loyal. That's the same as Ehrenberg Bass. And then one of his other takes I got was influencers aren't that influential. Well, this is from your he also says that mental and physical availability isn't accepted by any serious academics. So there's, I don't talk to that many serious academics, talk to a few. And Elena, I know you read tons of the papers that are out there. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Is a funnel seriously accepted by any serious academic? I don't know if that's true either, but we all use it. So I'm with you, Conor. I think it's going to create a huge conversation, and I'm interested to see where this conversation goes. But I also don't know that people will read past the headline, and so I think there will be a debate about a lot of things that really aren't that different.
And the problem will be when people just read the headline.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's the headline in MI3 was really mediocre outcomes. And so it's like, wow, okay. So, and look, I think from talking to him, the starting point was never disprove what's out there. It was a completely different starting point. I was taking then the Cantor database, I think again, like 1,000.
Oh, right. It was Cantor was, the partner in this, which is also a weird one because like there's like these academic institutions that just don't like each other. And I think they're not friendly with one another. So it feels like, I don't know.
Yeah. Look, but it's going to be a fascinating debate.
Yeah.
Or it should be.
Like, it should be. I'm sure there's an episode incoming where we can debate this.
Yeah. Part that's also frustrating to me is like, how much debate do we have against, like, it feels like we constantly shoot ourselves in the foot. Like we learn something, we're like, oh, that's good. No, just kidding. We learned something new that totally like, but then it's just a branded version of something, iteration off of something. And so I'm like, at what point, like, nobody don't argue about gravity, which is something that I think is really important.
Yeah.
But we somehow reinvent marketing every couple months or years. And I kind of wonder, like, it was start with why a bunch of years ago, and everybody's like, oh, we got to start with like, nobody, I don't even know if people read the book, but they go, well, I read the title.
It makes sense.
So and that's one of the things I think that led us down purpose path. I don't know. I'm just wondering like how much of this is going to be helpful and how much of it's going to be hurtful.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we do argue a lot.
Yeah. The debate is good, but I don't know at the expense of what.
Yeah. I guess I would just add that what's driven, like our agency are big proponents of Ehrenberg Bass principles, but what's driven that has been they've worked for clients and grown their businesses. If they didn't, we would not be in business because they wouldn't be working with us. So like whatever is, and again, there's exceptions, there's different ways of doing it. We have a unique approach that Byron Sharp wouldn't 100% agree with, but I think that ultimately as a marketer, you've got to be tied to business results. And you could talk about EBI until you're blue in the face, but if your revenue is tanking, they probably won't want to hear it. So it's all about how can you drive business results, and then what story are you going to tell?
Exactly.
Totally. Well, that was a really interesting side conversation.
Yeah, sorry. I am.
That's okay.
I'm like, wait, what?
That was great.
That's good.
Great.
Well, thanks for this annual, second annual, maybe not a forever annual, but tradition.
It's a tradition.
Yeah. With the flashing lights in the background, the Christmas jumper. Yeah. It's great. Snow
next year
in Minnesota.
Yep. This is an audio first medium, but that's great too.
Well, thanks guys. It was really awesome to have this with you again. And yeah, it was fun to do and lots of really great conversation, lots of great debate. That was productive, I think. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks a million.
Christmas and happy holidays to everybody.
Yeah.
Happy holidays.
Cheers. Well, thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed that episode. It's always great to get together with Marc V and Elena. Super smart people and really sound. And actually, I forgot to ask Marc and V if they're going to be at Cannes this year, which reminds me, if you're looking to get involved with Cannes 2025, the sponsorship kit is available. So drop us a line or visit that'swhatIcallmarketing.com/sponsor. Look, that's it actually for this year. This is our last episode of the year. Thank you so much, every single person that has tuned in, watched an episode, shared an episode, liked an episode, subscribed. Honestly, it is so appreciated. I absolutely love That's What I Call Marketing, meeting and speaking to so many amazing marketers. It's an absolute pleasure, an absolute treat. And I've some amazing guests coming for you next year. Some big moments that I'm really looking forward to, and we're actually going to be launching next season 4. Can you believe we're going to be launching with the amazing Grania wafer from Diageo, and I'm so looking forward to that. So stay tuned for that. If you're taking a break over the next couple of weeks, enjoy it, relax. You can always listen back to a few of the episodes of the podcast you may have missed, and we'll catch you in the new year. Thanks a million from me, your host Conor Byrne. Take care.
If you would like to reach an engaged community of marketing leaders, get in touch with That's What I Call Marketing to discuss sponsorship opportunities.